Good afternoon, this is your captain speaking with just a little flight information. We're flying at an altitude of 37,000 feet and our airspeed is 400 miles an hour. A couple little facts here. I'm packing a Colt King Cobra, that's a .357 caliber firearm with a black rubber grip and a 6-inch barrel, capable of piercing body armor at a distance of up to 27 feet, and it can put a hole in human bone and flesh the size of the Grand Canyon, which, by the way, is coming up on the left-hand side of the plane, so just sit back and relax and enjoy the rest of the plane.
No, not you. Not you. Your organization's terrible. Should I tell you? Should I tell you? Oh, you're Boy Scouts, but you know life. You know life. You know I'm totally off script right now.
Hello, this is News Dive, and I'm your host, Shane. It is Tuesday, August 1st, 2023, and let's dive into the headlines. The London-based oil giant BP reported second quarter profits of $2.6 billion on Tuesday and announced a 10% dividend raise for shareholders on the heels of what was likely the hottest month on record. A grim milestone that scientists say was made possible by the burning of fossil fuels. Donald Trump's Political Action Committee is nearly broke after spending tens of millions of dollars, nearly everything in its bank account, on the former president's many legal fees. Save America PAC started out last year with $105 million, but now it has less than $4 million, according to Federal Election Commission filings released on Monday. The DeSantis campaign last week faced backlash after a top staffer reshared a video in which an image of DeSantis was layered with a Nazi symbol, the Florida flag, and marching soldiers. Reporting from Semaphore confirmed what many had suspected. The DeSantis campaign made the video themselves. As the very bad Nazi memes roll in, DeSantis supporters are reportedly getting fed up with the campaign's priorities. According to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's official documentation, no toxic pollutants have emerged in the United States in nearly 5 decades. And 2 advocacy groups on Monday demanded that the agency add more than 1,000 chemicals to its list to bring the inventory up to date. More than 3 million kids across the United States could lose child care, and nearly 7 million patients could lose access to primary care if Congress doesn't approve funding by September 30th. But lawmakers in both the House and Senate left town for August recess late last week after making little noticeable progress towards averting the looming care funding cliffs and keeping the federal government open. The Century Foundation warned in a recent report that roughly 3.2 million children could lose their child care spots, and more than 230,000 child care workers could lose their jobs if Congress allows emergency funding provided under the American Rescue Plan to expire without any additional investments. And that will conclude today's headlines. When a new peer-reviewed study announces that a crucial Atlantic Ocean circulation system, a cornerstone of the global climate, may collapse as quickly as 2 years from now, you'd think news outlets might want to put that on the front page. The AMOC, Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, moves warmer water from the tropics to the North Atlantic, where it cools, sinks, and returns down the U.S. East Coast. Its collapse would be a climate tipping point with, as the British Guardian explained, disastrous consequences around the world, severely disrupting the rains that billions of people depend on for food in India, South America, and West Africa. It would increase storms and drop temperatures in Europe, and lead to a rising sea level on the eastern coast of North America. It would also further endanger the Amazon rainforest and Antarctic ice sheets. The study, published by an open access affiliate of the prestigious scientific journal Nature, used new statistical methods rather than new observations to make its predictions, which contradicts the IPCC's latest assessment. The IPCC deemed a full collapse this century very unlikely, but it relied on data that only went back to 2004. The new study The Guardian reported used sea surface temperature data stretching back to 1870 as a proxy for the change in strength of the AMOC currents over time. The study projected the collapse of the ocean system between 2025 and 2095, with 2050 being the most likely date, without sharp reductions in global carbon emissions. Some climate scientists are cautious about the new study, suggesting that more observational data is needed to say the collapse could happen so imminently. But, as climate scientist Jonathan Foley argued, though the study doesn't offer certainty, the consequences are so dire that the only prudent reaction to this is to work to address climate change as quickly as possible to avoid these kinds of impacts. I really wish that journalists and editors took this as seriously as scientists do and reported it loudly and accurately, taking the time to get the facts right, Foley wrote. The planet is in trouble, and we need to have the best possible information. Unfortunately for the planet and those who inhabit it, corporate media would rather look the other way, at worst, and offer scary clickbait headlines with few connections to actionable policy at best. At the Washington Post, editors put the news on page 12. That's nearly the same place it put the news of the last dire report about the AMOC 2 years ago, which didn't put a timeline on the collapse, but suggested it was much closer to a tipping point than previously expected. In the Post's 2021 report, the study author was quoted, "It's one of those events that should not happen, and we should try all that we can to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as quickly as possible." Yet, the lack of urgency evinced by news media make that kind of swift and dramatic action next to impossible. The Wall Street Journal, the favored newspaper of the business crowd, didn't even bother to cover the report, despite the massive economic implications of an AMOC collapse. It did, however, find room on its front page that day for a story headlined, "The Man Pre-Summer, How Men's Shorts Got So Long." NPR focused more on the importance of the timing of the collapse than on the collapse itself, under the headline, "Why It's So Important to Figure Out When a Vital Atlantic Ocean Current Might Collapse." The article presented the story as primarily a debate over the timing of the collapse, with the upshot being that crucial tipping points in the climate system are incredibly hard to predict. NPR applied the term urgent twice to the idea of doing more climate research, with rapid action to limit how much the planet warms added to the second time, almost as an afterthought. The New York Times was one of the only major outlets to put the news on its front page, with a well-reported piece by Raymond Zhang. It also did better than many, mentioning human-driven warming in the second paragraph, and paraphrasing a scientist that uncertainty about the timing of an AMOC collapse shouldn't be taken as an excuse for not reducing greenhouse gas emissions to try and avoid it. That scientist, Haley Kilborn, was given the last word. "It's very plausible that we've fallen off a cliff already and don't know it," said Kilborn. "I fear, honestly, that by the time any of this is settled science, it's way too late to act." Yet, even here, no connections were made to concrete policy options, and no policy experts or activists were quoted to offer them. The only other front-page U.S. newspaper mention FAIR could find in the Nexus database was the Charleston Post and Courier, which similarly made no connections to policy. In the context of a summer of extreme climate events, including unprecedented heat waves, ocean temperatures, and wildfires, we desperately need a media system that treats the climate crisis like the 5-alarm fire that it is, and demands accountability from the politicians and industries, not least the fossil fuel industry, driving us off the cliff. And that will conclude today's episode. Please like and follow the show, give the show 5 stars, a good review, and share it around. Follow the show on social media, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.